Elon Musk. I mean, you know him, right? Everybody's heard of Elon Musk. You probably even shared a meme or two about the guy, haven't you?
Oh, definitely.
But today, we're hitting pause on all of that. We're done with the Twitter drama.
Right.
We're done with the Tesla autopilot headlines for a minute. Today, we're going deeper. We're going deeper with Walter Isaacson's new biography.
Yeah.
And this time, we really want to understand, like, Elon himself. What makes the guy tick?
Yeah.
What shaped him?
Well, and Isaacson's biography really does offer us this, like, incredibly detailed portrait of the man, wouldn't you say?
Oh, for sure.
It's not just, dates and achievements. It's
Right.
not just a timeline.
Yeah.
It's like we're right there with a young Elon in South Africa, experiencing his wins and losses. You really get a sense of his perspective.
Yeah. Isaacson does such a good job of painting this vivid picture of his childhood.
Right.
And it's almost cinematic.
It is.
Like the way Isaacson writes, you go from this stark backdrop of apartheid-era South Africa. I mean, he even recounts a story about Elon encountering like a dead body on a train platform.
Yes.
It's intense.
Wow.
And then suddenly we're transported to this completely different world. We're on a Canadian wheat farm.
Yeah.
What a jarring shift for like anyone, but especially a young mind.
Absolutely.
I mean, do we get the sense that this farm life was idyllic for Elon? Or was it more isolating, do you think?
That's the question, right? And it makes you think about how this drastic change in scenery might have like really influenced how he views challenges later on. Did he see escaping South Africa as like this way to define his own playing field,
Right, like a blank slate almost.
Exactly. It makes you think about Elon's quote that Isaacson includes about America being like the distillation of exploration. Maybe Canada and later the U.S. really represented this blank canvas for him to sort of like conquer,
Totally. And speaking of impactful settings, we kind of can't talk about Elon's like younger years without also talking about family.
Right.
Specifically, his relationship with his father, Errol.
Yeah, definitely complicated.
It's complicated.
Ah.
Isaacson does not shy away from the more difficult aspects of their relationship, like that heartbreaking story of Errol siding with the bully who beat Elon up. Come on.
Yeah, it's tough to read.
It's brutal. But then on the other hand, we also get this picture of Errol as kind of this, adventurer himself, obsessed with finding this like lost city in the Kalahari Desert.
Yeah.
It's very Indiana Jones.
Total Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
It's a perfect way to put it.
It makes you wonder, though, did Errol, without even realizing it, kind of equip Elon with this like relentless drive, but also this deep-seated fear of complacency?
It's fascinating, right?
It is.
Because you have that line from Grimes, Elon's former partner, saying he just doesn't know how to smell the flowers, He's always pushing, always moving. So is that the legacy of Errol's influence? Like ambition as a shield makes you think.
It really does. You have to wonder if all of those early experiences kind of laid the groundwork for how Elon approaches, well, pretty much everything.
Right.
And speaking of contradictions, because, that seems to be a theme here, Isaacson also talks about a time when Elon was labeled retarded by one teacher,
Oh, wow.
only to be called a genius by another.
Oh, my God.
It's a lot to unpack, right? Like, were these just wildly inaccurate labels from these educators?
Yeah.
Or did they accidentally reveal something about how Elon's mind worked even back then? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
It makes you wonder how many other really brilliant minds kind of get mislabeled early on and what impact those labels have.
Oh, totally.
And you can almost draw a line from those early labels to how Elon learns later on in life, right? Like, think about his approach to that business simulation game in college. Isaacson talks about how he basically reverse engineered the entire thing.
Oh, wow.
Or how Elon felt like he didn't even need to bother with a PhD because he already had the answer in his head.
Oh.
So is it possible that Elon's brain was just always wired differently, whether or not like other people recognized it?
It makes you wonder. It really does make you wonder. And it's, it's not just Elon's learning style that's, let's say, unconventional, right? Isaacson spends a lot of time on this thing he calls Elon's irony setting.
Okay, yeah.
Almost like he's always switching back and forth between being deadly serious and, totally messing with people.
Oh, totally.
And no one can really tell which one it is.
Yeah.
Isaacson even quotes Max Levchin, the PayPal co-founder.
Mm-hmm.
And Levchin says, there's irony in everything Elon does. He operates on an irony setting that goes up to 11, but never goes below 4.
Wow.
So reading this, I can't help but wonder, did Isaacson give us any examples of this? Like irony setting backfiring on Elon? Or is this just like part of what makes him so unpredictable and, let's be honest, effective?
That is a great question. I mean, I think you could argue that his leadership style has that same kind of unpredictable energy.
Oh, interesting.
Isaacson doesn't shy away from those, like, really demanding aspects of how Elon leads. Like, remember those insane deadlines he'd set?
Oh, yeah.
And those engineers practically living at the factory, pulling all-nighters.
Intense.
And then there's that anecdote about a SpaceX employee who actually chose to stay friends with Elon instead of continuing to work with him.
Oh, wow.
That's got to tell you something, right?
It really does. It makes you wonder, like, could you ever truly relax around someone like that?
Yeah.
And speaking of complicated relationships, Isaacson does such a thoughtful job when he's talking about Elon's personal life.
He does. He handles it really well.
But there's definitely this theme of these really intense, but often short-lived romances.
Right.
Like his first marriage to Justine, then the whole whirlwind of marrying and divorcing Tallulah Riley. Not once, but twice.
Yeah.
And listen, it's not our place to speculate or anything, but we can analyze what Isaacson presents.
Of course.
So were these relationships genuine connections for Elon? Or were they, I don't know, maybe filling a different void in his life?
It's tough to say for sure, but there are some really interesting clues sprinkled throughout the biography.
Yeah.
Like, you have to think about Grimes's comment, another one of Elon's former partners.
Yeah.
She said he loves fire.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's how Elon reacted after the loss of his son, Nevada. It was such a profound loss, and he just dove even deeper into work. So it suggests this pattern of almost seeking solace in external achievements, right?
Right.
Almost like a self-perpetuating cycle he can't escape.
That's an interesting way to put it, this idea of a cycle.
Yeah.
And that actually brings us perfectly to Elon's decision-making process, which some might argue is a cycle into itself.
Okay, yeah.
Isaacson uses the whole autopilot situation as like a prime example of how Elon can be both incredibly visionary, but then also kind of a reckless risk taker.
Right.
On the one hand, he's pushing the boundaries of what self-driving technology can even do in a way we just haven't seen before.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, he makes these really bold predictions, and they don't always pan out.
Like what?
Like, remember when he said a Tesla would drive itself across the country, no human intervention, by the end of 2017?
I do remember that, yeah.
And my Roomba still can't navigate around my coffee table.
That's amazing. It's like that classic Elon tightrope walk,
Totally.
What I find really interesting about the whole autopilot thing is that initially, Elon was open to using radar.
Oh.
But then, I don't know what happened, he just does a complete 180 and goes all in on a vision-only system.
Huh.
It makes you wonder, was that a calculated bet on what he decided was the superior technology?
Right.
Or was it more about Elon needing to prove a point? It really highlights his faith in first principles thinking, strip away all the assumptions, start from scratch, build up from there.
Right.
It's fascinating.
And if we're talking about stripping things away and rebuilding them from scratch, I mean, we have to talk about Starship.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Isaacson does a really good job of outlining that whole development process, but man, what a wild ride.
It's a wild ride.
It's like something out of movie montage.
Totally.
Like, Elon is just laser focused on speed, pushing everyone around him to innovate constantly, come up with these crazy ideas.
I mean, some of them are pretty out there.
Like swapping all these expensive materials for just basic steel.
Yeah, the steel thing.
Or completely scrapping the Falcon Heavy to focus all their energy on Starship. And get this, Isaacson mentions that even some really experienced aerospace engineers, they looked at the initial Starship design and were like, this is too complex.
Oh, wow.
Too complex. So how does any of this even work?
I mean, that is the fascinating paradox of Elon Musk.
It really is.
By embracing what most people would see as chaos, by just constantly testing boundaries, pushing the limits, he finds solutions that these traditional thinkers would completely miss.
Interesting.
And we see that pattern throughout Isaacson's book.
Good.
It goes all the way back to his childhood. He sees potential where everyone else just sees a problem. And more often than not, that perspective leads to something totally groundbreaking.
It's funny you should put it that way because I got to say, after spending all this time with Isaacson's Elon, I kind of know how to feel.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's this like awe, this guy, he just does things.
He really does.
But honestly, I'm also left with this like little nod of apprehension.
Yeah, I get that.
It's like, at what cost, you know?
Well, and Isaacson doesn't shy away from those potential costs.
Right.
Like, you really feel the sacrifices Elon makes, the burnout, the toll it takes on him and everyone around him.
It's intense, and it begs the question, like, where does this kind of ambition even go from here? This book, this whole thing, it came out before the Twitter takeover, right?
That's right, yeah.
So knowing what we now know about Elon, this drive for control, his going all in even when everyone's saying, like, pump the brakes.
It makes you think.
Was acquiring Twitter inevitable for someone like that?
It's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And Isaacson, he kind of leaves us hanging there, you know?
Yeah.
We get this crazy detailed look at Elon's psyche, these patterns, these themes throughout his life.
Right.
And here we are watching him try to handle this thing, this force like Twitter, where he can't just like will things to go his way.
It's like Isaacson gave us all the puzzle pieces.
Right.
And now we're just sitting here watching the picture get put together, but we don't know what it's going to be.
And it is a little bit daunting, isn't it?
It is. Because we've talked about Elon's need for control, this fear of complacency that seems to drive him, this like superhuman ambition to achieve.
Yeah.
What happens when that runs headfirst into something as chaotic and honestly as unpredictable as Twitter?
I mean, that is the question, and unfortunately it's one that only time will answer. But that's what I love about a deep dive like this, you know. Isaacson gives us these tools to really try to get Elon Musk not just as this, like, titan of industry, but as a human being.
Totally.
He's complex, he's got flaws, he's obviously brilliant, and yeah, sometimes he's a little baffling. But looking back, analyzing all of this, it helps us understand where he is now, and maybe even get a glimpse of where he and all of us really might be headed.
And that's what it's all about. If you want to learn more about Elon Musk, his life, his companies, his ambitions, you have got to check out Walter Isaacson's new biography. It's an incredible read. And as always, thanks for taking this deep dive with us. We'll see you next time, right here on